You've been told that power is something that's earned, that it's given to the deserving. But that is a lie. Power isn't earned, it's engineered. It's a machine, carefully and brutally constructed with a very specific psychological architecture. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to dissect the mind of a man who built an entire empire by treating politics not as an art, but as a cold, hard science. Let's be honest, you probably believe that history is written by idealists, right? I mean, we love those stories. We're taught to admire the visionaries, the people with a strong moral compass who move the world forward. But what if that's just a bedtime story we tell ourselves? Because that view, it's not just wrong, it's a dangerous fantasy. It's a narrative designed to keep you from seeing the raw, uncomfortable truth of how the world actually works, how power is really taken, and how it's held. The truth is, history is written by a different kind of person entirely. It's written by those with the psychological brutality to see nations as chess pieces and to see people, you and me, as mere variables in a vast equation of power. They aren't moved by ideals. They're moved by a single, relentless objective: to win. And if you want a perfect case study in this kind of mind, you look no further than Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor. The unification of Germany wasn't some happy historical accident. No, it was the deliberate, calculated outcome of a mind that saw the world in a way most of us can barely comprehend. And that's exactly what we're here to do: dissect that mind, piece by bloody piece. So to truly understand a man like Bismarck, we have to go way beyond the dates and battles in the history books. We need to look at the psychological engine that was humming beneath the surface, driving his every decision. This isn't about some vague notion of genius. This is about a very specific and very rare cognitive blueprint.
We've all heard the term realpolitik, right? But let's throw out the textbook definition for a second. Let's see it for what it really is: a psychological operating system. See, most people navigate the world through a filter of emotions, morals, and what they believe is right. But a mind wired for realpolitik sees none of that. It just sees a system, a machine. And it doesn't get emotional about the machine. It just analyzes it, finds the levers of power, and pulls them. Period.
And this is precisely what set Bismarck apart from all his peers. While they were all trapped in a psychological cage built from tradition, ideals, and morality, Bismarck was free. He saw the world for what it was to him: a grand chessboard. And he knew he was the only one in the room who truly understood all the rules. And he had absolutely no problem breaking them to win. So what creates a mindset like this? Well, psychology actually has a term for it: social dominance orientation. It's a fundamental personality trait. Basically, it measures how much someone prefers a world built on hierarchy. People who score high in SDO, they don't just tolerate inequality, they fundamentally believe in it. They see a world of winners and losers, of superior and inferior groups, and they are driven to maintain and enforce that order. When you look at Bismarck's career, you see this trait in action at every single turn. But here's the thing: Bismarck didn't just have this unique psychological makeup. He figured out how to weaponize it. He knew how to play on the emotions of the masses. And our first case study shows exactly how he used the powerful feeling of national honor to light the fuse on a war that would build his empire. The situation in 1870 was clear. Bismarck needed a way to pull the southern German states into his orbit. And what's the fastest, most effective way to create unity? Well, you manufacture a common enemy. The goal was cold, simple, and utterly ruthless: provoke France into declaring war. And this is a masterclass in psychological warfare. Look at the steps. A polite, standard diplomatic meeting happens. A dry, factual telegram about it is sent to Bismarck. But where others saw report, Bismarck saw a weapon. He took his pen and surgically sliced away all the diplomatic niceties, all the polite language, until all that was left was a raw, public insult. He knew exactly which emotional buttons to push to make both the French and the Germans feel their national honor had been attacked. And don't think for a second this was an accident. His own inner circle got it immediately. When his top general, von Moltke, read the edited version, he said it all. It no longer sounded like a negotiation. It sounded like a challenge. Bismarck had successfully manufactured the casus belli, the very incident he needed to get the conflict he wanted. But Bismarck's psychological operations weren't just aimed at foreign powers. Oh no. To truly forge his empire and consolidate his own power, he turned those same tactics inward,
applying the brutal logic of division and control to his own people.
He invented an incredibly potent psychological weapon, the concept of the Reichsfeinde, enemies of the empire. Now, this wasn't just a political insult, it was a brand. A label designed to psychologically isolate, demonize, and neutralize any group whose loyalties might extend beyond the borders of his new state. And his two main targets? Catholics and socialists. His so-called Kulturkampf, the culture struggle, was nothing less than a psychological war on Germany's Catholic population. You see, he couldn't stand the idea that they had an allegiance to a power outside his control, the Pope in Rome. He saw it as a state within a state, so he tried to crush it, taking state control over the church, but it was a massive miscalculation. He underestimated their resolve. Instead of breaking them, the persecution just made them stronger, forging their identity and hardening their political will.
He used a similar playbook against the socialists. He saw their internationalist ideas as a direct threat. After 2 failed assassination attempts on the Kaiser gave him the perfect excuse, he passed the anti-socialist laws. These laws didn't just argue with socialists, they sought to erase them, banning their meetings, shutting down their newspapers, and, as you can see here, leading to the imprisonment of 1,500 people. He was trying to make an entire political belief system illegal.
But brute force is a clumsy tool. Bismarck was smart enough to know that pure repression often creates martyrs. He needed something more subtle, more insidious. And this led him to one of his most brilliant and misunderstood moves, a new kind of control disguised as kindness. Just listen to his own words. Read that. Does that sound like a humanitarian? Or does it sound like the cold, clear-eyed calculation of a master strategist? He understood a fundamental psychological truth. Dependency is a form of control. And so he built the world's first modern welfare state. Health insurance, accident insurance, old age pensions. It looked progressive. It looked benevolent. But the goal was never benevolence. It was a preemptive psychological strike. It was a massive state-sponsored bribe designed to make the working class dependent on his state for their security, and in doing so, to neuter their desire for real revolutionary change. So what happens in the end? What is the ultimate legacy of an empire built not on shared values or genuine unity, but on a foundation of coercion, manipulation, and bribery? The answer is fragility, inevitable fracture. Look, the German Empire was a stunning piece of political engineering. There's no doubt about it. But it was never organic. It was an artificial creation soldered together by war and held in place by repression. The entire massive structure was balanced on one single point: the force of Bismarck's will and the complex systems of control he had personally designed. And this quote, this tells you everything. This reveals the deepest fear of the man who projected nothing but strengths. For all his power, he lived with the constant, gnawing anxiety that the whole thing could fall apart. He knew the system he had built was a house of cards, always one wrong move away from collapsing into the nightmare of chaos he had spent his entire life trying to hold at bay. We've just walked through the mind of a master of control. You've seen the architecture. He used honor, fear, division, and even state-sponsored kindness as weapons. And you need to understand that these psychological tools did not disappear with him. They are being used right now. In politics, in the media, in your own life. So you're left with a choice. You can continue to be a pawn in a game you don't understand, manipulated by forces you refuse to see. Or you can commit to opening your eyes, to seeing the world as it actually is. If you are ready for that, then subscribe to this channel, join the conversation in the comments, and activate notifications so you never miss another dose of reality. The choice, as always, is yours. Join the aware.